Welcome to Nonington Farms, and we're delighted, absolutely delighted, to be awarded Leaf Demonstration Farm status and to be number 41 as well. These are extraordinary times. Obviously, being in the middle of a global pandemic has been disastrous, as we all know. However, I do think there have been a lot of positives that are beginning to come out of that. One of which has been particularly in this country, how important access to the countryside is, and people are really beginning to want to know a bit more about it, and that's been really heartening to see. Just as it has been great to see that people care about where their food comes, the food supply chains, and being awarded key worker status as a farmer has been equally rewarding, I think. And so the relevance of farming and the environment has been highlighted through this global pandemic, as also has the impact of climate change by everyone being locked down. And so it's had far more reaching impact than something like Extinction Rebellion. And then slotted in between the beginning of the pandemic and now has been the agriculture bill in this country, where we are looking at our politicians to set the future in a post-Brexit food bill. Any one of these three things would in of itself be an enormous thing to be talking about, but to be set in the middle of all three of those things and to be part of that dialogue for us is extremely exciting. We are champing at the bit to start shouting about under the Leaf banner.
Nonington Farms is a 3,000 acre arable business. We have our own land and then we have 5 other contract farming arrangements that we basically treat as one. We have 2 layers to our business. We have the contracting layer where we're doing the operational side from drilling the crop through to storing it. And then we have the other layer, because I'm an agronomist and Emma is a land agent, and we offer the service whereby we do the BPS, we implement countryside stewardship agreements, we do the budgeting and management accounts, just to name a few. And our business is about maximising our returns to the clients, but in tandem with ensuring that the environment conservation measures thrive as well. This led us into integrated farm management and Leaf, because this is our sort of core values, integrated farm management. We understand that to maximise returns you have to reduce your costs through benchmarking, for example, and also with our overall planning experience in terms of chemical inputs and varietal selection. And then the other thing is, through the Leaf mark, is adding a premium to the produce that we grow on the farm. And our Leaf demonstration farm, we're all about breaking the myth, I think sometimes people see with integrated farm management, that you can't maximise your returns at the same time of looking after the nature and the conservation element of your business. And that is why we really want to encourage people to come and see us, to have a look at some of the measures that we've introduced.
So I'm by background a teacher and also a surveyor, and I've been able to combine these two loves of mine through the farm and being a big advocate of outdoor education. So that is getting people of all ages, right from birth. I would say the youngest we've had on the farm on a visit is 9 days, and right up to 100 and whatever, because there's always something that you can learn and share knowledge with. So youngest groups coming out, we have schools coming out, but we also have other interested parties. So for example, we did Open Farm Sunday a few years ago, and for various boring reasons we had to postpone it on the actual day. And instead, we actually found we had more uptake by being able to offer seasonal visits to the community, not just upon upon one day of coming out on the farm, but they were actually able to understand everything that we were doing across the year and see how things changed. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take you on a virtual tour of the farm and give you a few examples from around the farm of our take on integrated farm management.
Winter barley, feed barley. I wanted to bring you here because this is an example of us using technology to make advancements of reducing the need for pesticides. This variety is called KWS Amistar, and it's a BYDV tolerant variety. For you who don't know what that is, it's barley yellow dwarf virus, which is transferred by aphids in the autumn, and it can reduce the yield significantly, at least over half if it is infected. So breeders have used characteristics to create this tolerance within it, and it means that it reduces the need to use insecticides in the autumn, which I'm all passionate for in terms of environmental point of view, but there's also a cost saving as well.
Here we are in a field of spring oats. Now last year this crop was wheat, and then straight after that we drilled a mustard cover crop so that we kept some cover all the way through until this was drilled in the early spring. By way of a comparison, the field next door was also wheat, and we then cut it and left it as an overwintered stubble. Now interestingly, this crop, this field, because of the taproot from the mustard, was able to be drilled a week earlier, and bearing in mind we had an incredibly wet winter and spring, though you wouldn't believe it now, it meant that we could drill a week earlier here, and we cut out one of the passes compared to next door because the taproot had done the cultivation work for us, thus saving us money and being beneficial to the environment.
This is our Rogator Fendt 655 36 metre sprayer, and this has basically meant that we've improved our efficiencies across the business. We've increased the boom width from 30 to 36 metres. We've also it's linked to a satellite RTK, so that you basically minimise the amount of chemical that you're using, because all you apply is the chemical that's actually required on that particular part of the field, because it goes round the headland and then it maps it, and then when you're going up and down to the rest of the field, it basically shuts on and off automatically. So basically meaning you only put the chemical where it's required, so you're saving money, and environmentally you're not overspraying.
Here we are in the depths of the farm. This is the grain tunnel, which is in between our two floor stores. We put this up in 2009 and were kind of shocked after the end of that harvest at how high the gas bill was. The idea is that you heat up this tunnel using gas, and then the hot air gets pushed out into the underneath the floor store where the wheat or whatever crop it is dropped. So what we thought was, why don't we put some insulation in this tunnel, so then the heat that we're up doesn't get dispersed elsewhere and just goes to where we want it to go. And just by putting this insulation in, saved us about 20% on our gas bill.
Increasingly we've had, and this is where I feel LEAF is, and the principles of integrated farm management are actually critical, because we need to have an alternative thinking rather than the chemical approach. So with this oilseed rape crop, the problem we've had when you plant oilseed rape, there's a pest called flea beetle which attacks the cotyledon leaves, and then after that it then bores into the centre of the plant, so that the plant then collapses and doesn't actually produce any seed. So an alternative approach that we've tried is using what we call the companion cropping. So you plant another seed with the oilseed rape that the flea beetle then hopefully wants to eat more than the oilseed rape. So we've tried a clover mix with this. We planted it in the first week of September. The establishment you can see now I'm quite pleased with. So I definitely think companion cropping has had a small part to play in the success of this crop.
here we've got an example of a beetle bank. It's not the best example, I must admit, but we're going to re-improve it, re-drill it next year, and probably put in a more exciting mix. But we're always learning and improving things along as we go along. The idea of a beetle bank, again, is this thing of connectivity and a mosaic of different habitats running through the farm, and it's connecting a hedge behind me and a field, a woodland over there. But the other thing, I mean, I know it's called a beetle bank, but it's also a great habitat for things like lacewings, ladybirds, and of course these are natural predators of aphids, so can help us in that way, and that's a really good example for us of integrated pest management, which we try and do. It avoids spraying the fields, it keeps the beekeepers happy, and it means that we can reduce our costs as well.
Our sewage sludge delivered, which is very nutritious, and it's treated sewage, so it's a natural resource that we've got rather than putting artificial compounds on. And this will be spread in about August time, prior to the wheat crop being grown. It's had a soil analysis, it's all been tested, so we know that we're putting appropriate nutrients to the requirement.
So for the last 10 years we've been coppicing about 1 or 2 hectares of woodland each year, and the benefits to the habitat are absolutely immense. Through the current research that we're doing through one of the LEAF projects in terms of carbon footprint, that it's massively impacting on lowering our carbon footprint.
Now we're going to talk about another of our really important crops, wildflowers. This is a wildflower meadow. It was formerly an arable field about 15 years ago, and then it was deemed to be unproductive. As you can see, you've got the roundels here, so it's very difficult to work within an arable rotation, and the productivity is low as well. So it was made more economic sense to take this out of production and put it into a stewardship scheme and to provide habitat for insects and for birds.
We've got a hedge that we planted about 5 or 6 years ago. Next to it is a grass margin, and then we've got this wild bird cover, which has recently been drilled, and it's nice to see that it's coming up now. In the wild bird cover we've got at least 5 different types of seed, so that a variety of different birds can benefit, not just big seeds but also little tiny ones as well. And then you've got the rest of the field. We put this in at the beginning of our HLS agreement, which was in 2010, and actually it's been hugely beneficial to the farm as a whole, because this wild bird cover creates a corridor of habitat and cover during the hungry gap in the winter, from the top of the field where there are grass margins and other plots, right down to the bottom where there's woodland and other things in the adjacent field. So it completely breaks up what would otherwise be a monoculture of just one big field, particularly given that this field is a spring crop this year, and so there could effectively have been nothing else for them to create the cover.
Now that brings us to the end of our virtual farm tour. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of flavour about Nonington Farms. And now I'm going to hand you back to Philip.